I spent my whole life trying to be the good daughter, always quiet, always dependable, while my sister was the star. No matter what I achieved, I was never the one they celebrated. Until one day, my mother asked me to cancel my engagement party for my sister's promotion. That was the moment everything changed. This is the story of how I broke free from being the forgotten daughter and finally chose me. If you've ever felt overlooked, pressured by family expectations, or struggled to believe you're enough, this is for you. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe if this story speaks to you. You're not alone, and you never were. If you've spent your whole life being invisible, you learn to stop expecting to be seen. That's how it started, I guess. Not with a loud bang, not with drama, just the quiet erasure of a person, one skipped birthday at a time. My name is Madonna. I'm 30 years old, and I've spent the last 3 decades being the background character in my own life. If you ever grew up in a house where love had a hierarchy, you'll understand. It's not that they didn't love me, it's that they loved her more. Her name is Serena, my younger sister, the golden girl, the kind of person who walks into a room and people rearrange themselves around her, like she's the sun and we're just revolving planets. She was beautiful in a way I never learned to be, and smart in a way that came with applause. Everything she touched turned into something my mother could brag about. I, on the other hand, was reliable. "You're such a good girl, Madonna," Mom would say. "You always understand," she'd add, like it was a compliment. Like understanding was my only job in this family. I think the first time I realized how deeply that role was carved into me was in middle school. Serena forgot her science project at home. I was already late for class, but I skipped school to bring it to her. My teacher scolded me. My mom thanked me, but only for saving Serena's grade. When you're the reliable one, no one ever checks if you're okay. They just assume you'll figure it out. And for a long time, I did. I had my routines, my quiet victories. I worked in healthcare administration, nothing glamorous, but solid, stable. I paid the bills. I never asked for much. I didn't know how. And then I met Elliot. He wasn't extraordinary in the way Serena was. He didn't own the room, he didn't sparkle. But he saw me, really saw me. The kind of seeing that makes you feel like maybe you weren't as invisible as you thought. He listened to me like my voice had weight, like I wasn't just someone's sister or someone's daughter. I was a whole person. 5 years together, and he still asked me how I liked my coffee every morning, even though he already knew. "Just in case your taste changes," he'd say. It sounds silly, but it meant something. Being asked, being remembered. We'd just started planning our engagement party. Nothing too fancy, just a garden gathering with fairy lights and friends. For once, I allowed myself to be excited. I'd never been the center of anything before, and it felt terrifyingly hopeful, like standing under a spotlight I wasn't sure I deserved. I hadn't told my mom yet, not because I was hiding it, but because I wanted to believe this was something for me, something untouched by family dynamics, something I didn't have to explain or defend. But of course, nothing stays untouched for long in families like mine, and that's where everything started to unravel. I remember the first time Elliot brought up the idea of getting engaged. We were folding laundry in the living room. Nothing grand, no candles, no speeches. Just the two of us. The hum of the dryer in the background, the late afternoon light pooling on the hardwood floor. He was holding one of my sweaters, the gray one with the stretched-out sleeves I always wore when I felt small. He looked at me and said, "You know, I want to grow old with you in this exact moment. Just like this, you and your ridiculous sleeves." I laughed, and then I cried, because that was the most romantic thing anyone had ever said to me. That night, I laid awake long after he'd fallen asleep, his hand still wrapped around mine. I stared at the ceiling, the quiet settling over me like a blanket, and I felt something I hadn't let myself feel in years. Hope. The real kind. Not the temporary flickers I used to feel when Mom remembered my birthday, or when Serena hugged me in front of her friends. This hope was different. It didn't depend on anyone else noticing me. It came from being seen by one person and realizing that maybe, just maybe, that was enough. We started planning slowly, a small engagement party with friends and a few coworkers. Nothing too big. We weren't flashy people. I imagined the backyard at our friend Lena's house, strung with those warm white lights that look like stars. I pictured myself in a soft blue dress, simple, understated, something that wouldn't make me feel like I was pretending to be someone else. Elliot said he'd do the cooking because he didn't trust anyone else with the lamb skewers. We laughed, we dreamed, and for once, those dreams didn't feel like they belonged to someone else. I didn't tell my mom right away. I told myself it was because I was waiting for the right moment. But the truth was, I wasn't sure I wanted her to be part of it. Not because I didn't love her. I did. Deeply. But there's a difference between love and trust, and I'd long stopped trusting her with things that mattered to me. She had a way of making even good news feel like a mistake. Like I was being selfish for wanting something she hadn't chosen first. Still, old habits die hard. One Sunday, I dropped by her house with a box of groceries and told her about the engagement party while unpacking cans of soup. She blinked twice and said, "That's nice, dear," then asked if I could help her fix the Wi-Fi. No congratulations, no smile, just an immediate shift back to utility. And like always, I pretended not to notice. I told myself she was just distracted, that maybe she'd call later and ask about the venue, the guest list, the color of my dress, but the call never came. Serena didn't know yet. We hadn't spoken in a while. Not because of any fight, but because there was nothing to fight about. We simply orbited different worlds. I kept picturing her reaction when she'd find out. I imagined her hugging me, her perfect hair catching the sunlight, saying something like, "Finally," as if she'd been waiting for me to catch up. I should have known better. But in that moment, standing in the glow of my own quiet plans, I let myself believe. I let myself want, not just dream, but want something to be mine. And that wanting, that hunger to belong to my own life, was the beginning of everything unraveling. The call came on a Thursday morning. I was halfway through an email at work, eyes glazed from staring at spreadsheets too long, when my phone buzzed. "Mom," flashed across the screen. I hesitated before answering. She rarely called. Texts were more her style, quick and efficient, usually requests. "Hi, Mom," I said, trying to sound bright. "Sweetheart," she began, that tone she only used when she wanted something, warm like syrup over a bitter pill. "I have a bit of a scheduling thing I need to talk to you about." I already knew. I didn't know the details yet, but something about the way her voice curved made my stomach tighten. "It's Serena," she said, and I swear I could hear her smile. "She just got promoted, regional director. Isn't that wonderful?" "It is," I said, and meant it. Serena worked hard. She deserved it. Still, I waited for the twist. It always came. "Well, we thought it would be lovely to do a little dinner for her. Something nice, just family and close friends. To celebrate and, for her birthday too." "That's nice," I repeated, flat. "We're thinking the 18th. I froze. "That's the date of our engagement party." Silence, then a breezy, dismissive laugh. Oh, right, I forgot." She forgot. "Well," she continued, as if that settled it, "would you mind shifting yours? It's just, Serena's got so much on her plate, and this is the only weekend she's free. Yours is more casual, right? You can move it to the next week, or even combine the two. Wouldn't that be fun?" No, but I didn't say it. Not yet. I could hear myself breathing. That tight, high sound my chest makes when I'm trying not to break. "Mom," I said carefully, "this party means a lot to me." "Of course it does, honey," she said too quickly. "But this is a really big moment for your sister. You're always so understanding. It's what I admire most about you." I hung up not long after, politely, like a good daughter, like someone used to swallowing her voice whole. It wasn't the first time I'd been asked to step aside, but it was the first time I realized I didn't have to. I didn't tell Elliot right away. I walked home from work that day like I was moving underwater, Everything blurred at the edges, sounds muffled, the world too far away to touch. I got in, dropped my keys in the bowl, and stood in the kitchen staring at the unopened bottle of wine we'd been saving for the engagement party. My fingers brushed the label, but I didn't open it. Something about it felt disrespectful now, like toasting to a version of myself that didn't exist anymore. That night, I lay next to Elliot with my back to him, my thoughts screaming in the silence. I kept replaying her voice in my head. "You're always so understanding. It's what I admire most about you." Admire. That word scraped something raw in me. Admire like I was a virtue, not a person. Like being accommodating was the highest compliment I could ever earn. Not "I'm sorry we forgot," not "you matter too," just "thank you for being convenient." The next morning, I finally told Elliot. I tried to keep my voice even, like it wasn't a big deal, like I was just giving him a scheduling update. But he knew. He always knew. He didn't get loud. He just stared at me for a long time, then said, "You're not really thinking of changing the date, are you?" I shrugged, and the silence between us filled the room like smoke. "Madonna," he said, more gently this time, "you don't owe them your whole life." That's when it hit me. It wasn't just this one thing, it was the years stacked behind it. The birthdays skipped, the school plays she didn't show up for, the doctor's appointments I went to alone. The way Mom asked me to drop everything for Serena, but never the other way around. The quiet sacrifices I made that no one ever asked for, but always expected. I'd spent my entire life earning crumbs of affection and calling it love. I didn't know what to say to Elliot after that. Part of me wanted him to tell me what to do, like maybe he had a map out of this mess I'd spent a lifetime drawing. Another part, the quieter one, the scared one, wondered if he'd finally realize I wasn't worth the trouble, that I was too broken, too conditioned to bend, too tired to fight for anything that looked like joy. But he didn't pull away. He didn't fix it either. He just sat with me on the edge of the bed, silent, his hand warm against mine. I didn't cry. I didn't have tears left. Just this dull ache inside me like someone had been living in my chest for years, and I'd only now noticed the weight of them. Later that night, I made tea and sat across from him at the kitchen table. We didn't speak for a long time, but the silence between us wasn't empty. It was full, heavy. Then he said, "You know, it's not just your family. It's what you believe you're allowed to take up. Like you think space belongs to other people and you're just borrowing it." I didn't respond right away. I just stared into my cup and felt the words sink like stones. He was right. I had learned to shrink, to apologize before asking, to anticipate rejection so I wouldn't be surprised when it arrived. My whole life had been a rehearsal for disappearing without making a scene. Elliot leaned forward, elbows on the table, eyes soft but unwavering. "You deserve to want things, Madonna. You don't have to earn that." It undid me quietly. Not like a collapse, but more like an unraveling, a slow loosening of the knot I'd carried in my chest for years. No one had ever said that to me. Not in those words, not with that kind of certainty. And it scared me. Because if I was allowed to want, to exist on my own terms, then I'd have to start making choices for myself, real ones, maybe even difficult ones, and I wasn't sure who I would be without the need to please. I didn't plan to call Serena. I wasn't even sure I wanted to speak to her at all. But a week passed, and the silence between us grew heavier than any words we might have said. Then, one evening, while I was washing dishes, my phone rang. Her name lit up the screen, and before I could talk myself out of it, I answered. She skipped the hello. "You're not coming, are you?" Her voice was sharp, impatient, like she'd been rehearsing the conversation all day. "No," I said simply. There was a pause. Not long, but enough to let something crackle in the air between us. "Mom's really upset," she said. "You know this is important. It's my promotion, my birthday." "I know," she sighed, exasperated, familiar. "Why do you always do this, Madonna? Make everything about you the moment something doesn't go your way?" That one landed, not because it was true, but because it was exactly the kind of thing I used to believe, that my disappointment was drama, that my boundaries were selfishness in disguise. "I'm not making it about me," I said, my voice quieter than hers but steadier. "I'm just not making it about you anymore." There was a pause on the other end. It was longer this time. She tried again, softer this time, almost hesitant. "You've always been the one who keeps the peace." "I'm tired, Serena," I said. "I'm tired of keeping the peace when I've never even known what peace feels like." She didn't respond right away. Then, so quietly I almost didn't catch it, she said, "You think I don't feel that too?" That surprised me. I didn't answer. I just let her words settle. "I never asked for this pedestal," she added. "I hate it. Every time I fall short, it's like Mom loses a piece of herself." It hit me then. We were both performing. Different roles, same audience. I was the dependable one, she was the dazzling one. Neither of us got to just be girls, just sisters. "I guess neither of us ever got to be real," I said. There was silence, but this time it didn't feel like avoidance. It felt like recognition. And maybe that was the first real conversation we'd ever had. I wrote the message 3 times before I sent it. The first draft was angry, the second one sounded like I was apologizing, and the third was just honest. That's the one I sent. It wasn't long, just a few lines, but I knew they would echo. "Mom, I won't be coming to Serena's party. I'm not moving the engagement date either. I've spent my life being the one who understands. This time, I need you to try and understand me." I hit send and sat there, staring at the screen like it might take the words back. It didn't. Of course it didn't. There was no read receipt, no dots typing, just silence. And for once, I didn't try to fill it. For a few minutes, I felt like I might throw up. Not because I thought I was wrong, but because finally, I'd done something out of character. Something that couldn't be taken back, explained away, or softened by being the good one. And that terrified me. Because being good had been my whole identity, my safety blanket, my excuse, and without it, I wasn't sure who I was. Elliot came home just after sunset. I didn't tell him right away, but he saw it in my face. I was still clutching the phone like it might burn a hole through my palm. "I sent it," I said. That's all. He didn't ask for details. He just sat down beside me and took my hand, the same way he always did when the world felt too big. Later that night, I walked past the mirror in the hallway. I stopped, looked, not at my outfit, or my face, or whether my hair was frizzing up. I looked at my eyes, and I saw something there I hadn't seen in a very long time. Not pride exactly, but presence, a quiet, unfamiliar certainty. I had drawn a line. Not for drama, not to punish, but because it was time. Because peace, I was learning, doesn't always mean silence. Sometimes peace means finally saying no. In the days that followed, nothing happened, and that was the strange part. No calls, no messages, no last-minute guilt trips from Mom, no dramatic text from Serena. Just silence. And instead of feeling hurt by it, I felt empty, yes, but also still. Like I'd walked out of a room I didn't realize had been echoing with noise for years. For the first time in my life, I wasn't trying to fix anything. I wasn't preparing for someone else's disappointment. I wasn't bracing for impact. I was just here, with myself. And the quiet was unfamiliar, but not unfriendly. I started doing small things differently. I stopped answering emails after 6 p.m. I deleted the group chat with my cousins where I was the only one who ever remembered birthdays. I stood in front of the mirror one morning and didn't suck in my stomach or tilt my head for a better angle. I just looked, really looked, and I didn't flinch. I wrote, nothing grand, just sentences I'd never said aloud. Half memories, tiny truths. Things like, I wasn't unlovable, I was just unseen. Or, there is power in not being picked. I didn't know who I was writing to. Maybe to the girl I used to be. Maybe to the woman I was slowly becoming. but every word felt like stitching something back together, gently, without rush or apology. Elliot noticed. He didn't say much, but he started leaving space for me to speak more, like he sensed I finally had things to say. One night he asked, "How do you feel?" I thought about it for a long time. Then I said, "Like I'm not borrowing air anymore." And he smiled, not because he understood it perfectly, but because he knew it mattered. There was no applause, no dramatic transformation, just the quiet, radical act of choosing myself again and again, until it no longer felt like rebellion, until it started to feel like home. The day of the engagement party arrived without fanfare. There were no frantic phone calls, no last-minute changes, no drama, just the quiet rhythm of a morning that belonged to me. I woke up before Elliot and stood by the window for a long time, watching the soft light crawl across the floor. There was a strange sense of calm in my chest, not the kind that came from everything being perfect, but from knowing I wasn't shrinking to fit anymore. The party was small, just like we planned. Close friends, a handful of people from work, Lena's backyard strung with soft lights and mismatched chairs that somehow made the whole thing feel more human. I wore the blue dress I had pictured months ago, not because I wanted to impress anyone, but because it made me feel like myself. No makeup heavy enough to hide behind, no borrowed sparkle, just me, present. Elliot looked at me like he always did, like I was something solid in a world that kept shifting. When we clinked glasses, it wasn't loud or rehearsed. It was simple, a quiet celebration, a promise between two people who had chosen each other without spectacle. I saw a few guests wipe their eyes during the toast, but no one clapped, and that made me smile. It wasn't a performance, it was a moment. There were absences, of course. I felt them. Serena didn't come. Neither did my mother. There was no explanation, no apology, just empty spaces at a table I no longer needed them to fill. And strangely, I didn't feel betrayed anymore. I felt released, like I had stopped waiting for someone to show up and validate my life. After the cake was cut and the music softened into background hum, I stepped away from the gathering and sat alone for a while, watching people laugh, watching Elliot chat with Lena's dad like they'd known each other forever, watching the lights flicker in the trees. And for the first time, I didn't feel like a guest in my own story. This day was mine, not stolen, not postponed, not shared in someone else's shadow. Mine. And it didn't have to be big or loud or perfect. It just had to be real. Later that night, long after the last guest had gone home, and Elliot had fallen asleep, with one hand still resting near where mine had been, I sat down at my desk and opened a blank page. I didn't plan to write. My body was tired, but something in me felt unfinished, like a door was still slightly ajar, waiting for me to look through it one last time. I typed slowly at first, unsure of who I was writing to, until I realized it wasn't anyone else. It was me, not the woman I had become, but the girl I had been. The one who waited her turn in the family photo, who brought forgotten school projects to a sister who never remembered her birthday, who said it's okay 100 different ways because she thought that was what love looked like. Dear Madonna, you were never invisible. They just didn't know how to see you. You thought being quiet would make them love you more. That being useful meant being wanted, but you're not here to carry everyone. You were always meant to stand. You don't have to earn rest. You don't have to prove your softness isn't weakness. You don't have to apologize for asking or shrinking or learning late. It's not too late. Not for joy, not for peace, not for you. And if they never say sorry, if they never change, that doesn't make your truth any less true. You don't need their permission to be whole. You are allowed to take up space. You are allowed to be loved without performance. You are allowed to leave the room and not look back. I stared at the words for a long time after I finished, not crying, not smiling, just breathing, a little deeper than I had the night before, a little more like a woman who had nothing left to prove and everything left to live. I didn't print the letter, didn't fold it into an envelope or tuck it into a drawer. I didn't need to. It wasn't written to be kept. It was written to be released. Because sometimes closure isn't about the people who hurt you. It's about finally telling the truth to the part of yourself that believed you deserved it.